Apex hunters. The Vorax emerged from their stealth vessels like shadows given form. 7 feet of muscle, scale, and primal instinct, they moved through the human settlement with practiced precision. Their elongated skulls housed rows of sensing pits that detected heat signatures through walls. Curved talons flexed in anticipation. They didn't need to speak. A series of clicks and subvocal rumbles coordinated their movements as they surrounded the colony's main habitat dome. Captain Irina Volkov sat bolt upright in her cot, a cold sweat breaking across her skin. Something was wrong. 20 years of military service had honed her instincts to a razor's edge. The colony of New Horizon, nestled on the fertile plains of Epsilon 9, had been peaceful for the 3 months since she'd been assigned to command its small security detachment. But tonight, the silence felt wrong. Too complete, too sudden. She reached for her neural link and found it dead. Communications blackout. Security breach. She whispered to herself, grabbing her sidearm and activating the emergency protocols with a series of rapid taps on her wrist device. The soft blue glow of emergency lighting flickered to life throughout her quarters. She was halfway to the door when the first screams reached her. By the time she assembled her security team of 12, 3 sections of the colony were already burning. Colonists fled in terror through the streets, some clutching children, others simply running blindly from unseen horrors. "Form up," she shouted, raising her pulse rifle. Defensive perimeter around the evacuation center. Her team moved with disciplined efficiency, but nothing in their training had prepared them for what emerged from the smoke. The first Vorax scout burst from between 2 habitat units, moving with impossible speed for something so large. Before Private Mendez could even raise his weapon, the creature was on him, talons slicing through his armor like paper. The sound of his screams would haunt Volkov's nightmares for years to come. "Open fire," she ordered, unleashing a barrage from her own weapon. Energy pulses struck the creature, scorching its armored hide but doing little to slow its advance. 2 more security officers fell in seconds. Throughout human space, similar scenes played out across a dozen frontier colonies over the following weeks. Reports filtered back to Earth Command describing merciless attackers who seemed to relish the hunt, who used technology beyond human understanding, and who took no prisoners except occasionally to display their kills as trophies. Admiral Chen stared at the holographic display in Earth Command's Situation Room, his weathered face revealing nothing of the turmoil within. 30 years in the United Earth Defense Force had taught him to maintain composure, but the red markers indicating destroyed or compromised colonies were spreading across the display like a virus. "These aren't pirates or raiders," he said to the assembled military leadership. "The pattern doesn't fit. They're not interested in resources or technology. They're hunting our people." General Santos, commander of the 4th Fleet, leaned forward. The survivors from Epsilon 9 called them Vorax. Apparently, one of the xenobiologists recognized similarities to an apex predator species mentioned in Arcturian records. "What do we know about them?" Chen asked. "Not enough," Santos replied grimly. "The Arcturians only had fragmented information. Legends mostly. They call them the hunger that walks between stars. According to their records, the Vorax have hunted multiple species to extinction." Lieutenant Commander Zhao, head of Xenointelligence, brought up additional data. "We've managed to recover some visual recordings." The room darkened as footage appeared. Reptilian humanoids moving with fluid grace, equipped with biomechanical augmentations fused seamlessly to their bodies. They appear to be a species that evolved as apex predators and never lost their hunting instincts. Their technology is organic synthetic hybrid, unlike anything we've encountered before. Admiral Chen studied the footage and their tactics. "They target isolated populations first," Zhao explained. "They don't appear interested in conquest or resources, just the hunt itself. They employ stealth technology that renders our early warning systems useless, and they have weapons that cut through our best defenses like they're not even there." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity, despite its rapid expansion across the stars over the past century, was suddenly facing an existential threat. "What about direct military engagement?" asked General Santos. The 7th Battle Group intercepted a Vorax vessel near Proxima Centauri. Chen replied, his voice flat. 3 destroyers and a heavy cruiser against what appeared to be a single hunter ship. The battle lasted 6 minutes. We lost all 4 vessels. The holographic display updated to show the engagement. The human vessels converging on the Vorax ship, opening fire with their most powerful weapons. The Vorax vessel, shaped like a barbed spearhead, simply absorbed the initial barrage before releasing what appeared to be living missiles that attached themselves to the human ships and detonated, tearing through their hulls. "Their bioorganic technology adapts during combat," Zhao explained. "Our weapons become progressively less effective the longer an engagement continues. They learn from each encounter." "So do we," Chen said firmly. "I want every scrap of data from these encounters analyzed. Find me weaknesses, patterns, anything we can exploit." In the weeks that followed, the situation only worsened. The Vorax attacks increased in frequency and boldness, striking colonies closer to Earth's core systems. Humanity's military might, formidable against conventional threats, proved inadequate against an enemy that seemed to treat war as sport. On the colony world of New Darwin, Dr. Eliza Rice worked frantically in her laboratory as alarms blared throughout the research facility. As the colony's lead xenobiologist, she had been studying the limited biological samples recovered from previous Vorax attacks. The door to her lab slid open as Major Jackson Kane entered, his combat armor bearing the scars of recent fighting. "Doctor, we need to evacuate now," he said urgently. "They've breached the outer defenses." Reyes glanced up from her microscope. "Just 5 more minutes. I'm seeing something here in their cellular structure that could be crucial." Kane shook his head. "We don't have 5 minutes. The evacuation shuttle leaves in 10, and we need to move." Reluctantly, Reyes began downloading her research data. "Their biology is unlike anything I've seen before. Their cells contain structures that seem designed to absorb and adapt to external threats. It's as if their entire evolutionary path was geared toward being the perfect predator." As they hurried through the corridors, the sounds of combat grew closer. Energy weapons discharge mingled with inhuman shrieks and the screams of the dying. "Their hunting pattern is deliberate," Kane said as they ran. "They're not just killing. They're testing us, learning our capabilities before they commit to a full-scale invasion." "That tracks with what I've observed in their biology," Reyes replied. "They're information gatherers at the cellular level. Every encounter teaches them about us." They rounded a corner to find 3 security officers engaged in a desperate firefight with a Vorax hunter. The creature moved with blinding speed, its body seeming to absorb the energy weapons fire directed at it. Before Kane could raise his own weapon, the Vorax had dispatched 2 of the officers. The third backed away, firing desperately until his weapon overheated. Kane pushed Reyes behind him and opened fire with his heavy pulse cannon. The concentrated energy blast caught the Vorax mid-leap, sending it crashing into a wall. For a moment, Kane thought he'd killed it, until the creature rose again, its wounded flesh already knitting itself back together. "Run," he shouted, firing another blast to buy them time. They barely made it to the evacuation shuttle, the doors sealing behind them as Vorax claws scraped against the exterior hull. As the shuttle broke atmosphere, Reyes looked down at the colony through a viewport. Sections of the settlement were already burning, and she could make out the silhouettes of Vorax hunter ships descending through the clouds. "We can't keep running," she said quietly. "We need to understand them better than they understand us." Kane nodded grimly. "That's why I made sure you got out, Doctor. You might be our best hope." Back on Earth, the United Earth Defense Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from all major powers gathered to address the growing crisis. Admiral Chen presented the latest intelligence. "The Vorax have destroyed or occupied 17 colonies in the past month alone," he reported. Our conventional military responses have been ineffective. They appear to be studying our tactics, our weapons, even our physiological responses during combat. Are they preparing for a full invasion of core systems? Asked the representative from the European Federation. I don't believe so. At least not yet, Chen replied. Based on the pattern of their attacks and what we've learned from other species' encounters with them, the Vorax consider this a sport. They're hunting us because we present a novel challenge, not because they want our territory. That's supposed to be reassuring, snapped the Chinese representative. No, Chen said firmly. But it does give us time. They're not rushing to exterminate us. They're savoring the hunt. No, Chen said firmly. But it does give us time. They're not rushing to exterminate us. They're savoring the hunt. The room fell silent as images from the destroyed colonies appeared on the main display. Burning buildings, dismembered bodies displayed as trophies, recording devices deliberately left intact to capture the carnage. They want us to see this, Chen continued. They want us afraid. Fear makes the hunt more exciting for them. What options do we have? Asked the president of the United Earth government. Chen gestured to Dr. Reyes, who had been granted special clearance to attend the meeting. She stepped forward, her face pale but determined. The Vorax have physiological advantages that make them formidable opponents, she began. Enhanced strength, speed, sensory perception, and regenerative capabilities. But their greatest strength is also potentially their greatest weakness, their adaptive biology. She brought up detailed scans of Vorax cellular structures. Their cells are constantly evolving to counter threats. When our weapons damage them, their bodies analyze the attack and develop countermeasures. That's why our weapons become less effective the longer we fight them. How is that a weakness? Asked the Russian representative skeptically. Because adaptation requires energy and information, Reyes explained. If we can overload their adaptive capabilities or provide false information for their bodies to incorporate, we might be able to create vulnerabilities. Admiral Chen stepped forward again. Based on Dr. Reyes' research, we're developing new weapon systems and tactics, but we need time and resources. And in the meantime, asked the president. In the meantime, we evacuate our most vulnerable colonies, consolidate our forces, and prepare for a long war, Chen replied grimly. And we learn everything we can about the enemy. The meeting concluded with the authorization of the Prometheus Initiative, an all-hands effort to develop countermeasures against the Vorax threat. Research facilities around Earth began working around the clock, analyzing the limited data available and developing experimental weapons and defensive systems. In orbit above Mars, Major Kane led a Special Forces training program, developing new combat techniques based on the limited successes against the Vorax. His unit, composed of veterans who had survived encounters with the alien hunters, would form the core of humanity's eventual counteroffensive. They think we're prey, Kane told his soldiers during a briefing. But they've never hunted humans before. They don't understand what we're capable of when cornered. As he spoke, a priority alert sounded throughout the facility. Kane accessed the message and felt his blood run cold. The Vorax had struck again, this time hitting a major shipyard in the Jupiter system. The attack had been precise, devastating, and most worryingly, seemed specifically targeted to disrupt the development of new defensive technologies. They're learning our intentions, he murmured. Somehow, they know what we're planning. The hunt was intensifying, and humanity was running out of places to hide. But unknown to the Vorax, the seeds of resistance were being planted, seeds that would soon grow into their first real challenge in centuries of unchallenged predation across the stars. The breaking point. 6 months into the Vorax incursion, humanity had lost 37 colonies. The death toll surpassed 8 million. Refugee ships crowded the spaceways leading to Earth and other core worlds, their passengers bearing haunted expressions and terrible stories. Military morale plummeted with each failed engagement. The Vorax had pushed humanity to the edge, and the abyss of extinction loomed before them. Dr. Eliza Reyes hadn't slept properly in weeks. The underground laboratory complex beneath the Olympus Mons military installation on Mars had become her home, her prison, and her last hope. Surrounded by holographic displays of Vorax biology and attack patterns, she rubbed her bloodshot eyes and reached for another stimulant patch. "You're going to kill yourself at this rate," said a voice from the doorway. Reyes turned to see Major Kane entering, his face haggard from his own sleepless nights training Special Forces units. The last encounter with the Vorax had left him with a jagged scar running from his right temple to his jaw, a memento from a hunt he'd barely survived. "Can't sleep," she replied simply. "Not with the Ta City colony data coming in." Kane's expression darkened. "How bad?" "Total loss. 15,000 colonists. The Vorax didn't just raid this time. They set up what looks like a permanent hunting preserve. They're keeping some colonists alive, releasing them in batches for organized hunts." Kane slammed his fist against a console. "Those bastards. We need a breakthrough, Eliza. Anything." Reyes nodded toward a sealed chamber in the corner of the lab. "I might have something. Come see." Inside the chamber, suspended in a containment field, floated what appeared to be a severed Vorax arm, still twitching occasionally despite being separated from its owner. "How did you get this?" Kane asked, eyes wide. "Your team's raid on that hunter ship last week. It's the most intact specimen we've ever recovered. Most Vorax biological material breaks down too quickly after death for proper study." Kane studied the limb with a mixture of disgust and fascination. "And, watch this." Reyes activated a device that sent a focused pulse of energy into the specimen. The limb convulsed violently, its surface rippling as cells visibly rearranged themselves to develop a hardened layer that deflected subsequent pulses. "Adaptive defense, just like we've seen in combat," Kane observed. "Yes, but look what happens when I do this." Reyes adjusted the device to emit a different energy signature. The limb adapted again, but more slowly. She continued changing the frequency and intensity in rapid succession. After the fifth change, the limb's responses became erratic. After the eighth, parts of it began to rupture and dissolve. "Their adaptive capabilities have limits," she explained excitedly. "They can't respond to too many different threats simultaneously. It overloads their system." Kane's eyes narrowed in thought. "So if we hit them with multiple attack vectors that require different adaptations?" "Exactly. Their bodies can't keep up. It's like asking the computer to run too many complex programs at once. Eventually, it crashes." For the first time in months, Kane felt a flicker of hope. "This could work. We need to develop weapons that exploit this weakness." "Already on it," Reyes replied, leading him to another section of the lab, where various prototypes were being assembled. Multiphasic energy weapons that cycle through different frequencies faster than their bodies can adapt. Molecular disruptors that target their cellular communication pathways. Even specialized projectile weapons with programmable warheads. Kane nodded approvingly. "How soon can we field test these?" 2 weeks for the prototypes. Maybe a month for full production, if we get priority resource allocation. "You'll get it," Kane assured her. "I'm due to brief Admiral Chen tomorrow. This will be at the top of my report." As Kane turned to leave, an alert sounded throughout the facility. The distinctive 3-tone warning of an imminent attack. Both froze, exchanging glances of disbelief. "They can't have found this facility," Reyes whispered. "It's completely shielded and buried under kilometers of Martian rock." Kane's hand moved to his sidearm. "Someone led them here." The facility's security systems engaged automatically, sealing bulkheads and activating defense turrets. Kane's neural link came alive with tactical data as he patched into the security network. 3 hunter ships detected in Martian orbit, he reported tensely. "They're deploying landing craft, targeting this exact location." Reyes hurriedly began downloading her research data while initiating emergency deletion protocols for the main systems. "We can't let them get this information. If they learn we've discovered a weakness, they'll adapt," Kane finished grimly. "We need to evacuate you and the prototypes." Throughout the facility, alarms continued to blare as personnel rushed to battle stations or evacuation points. Kane's neural link buzzed with requests for orders from his Special Forces team. "Get your team to the research vault," he instructed Reyes. "Secure the prototypes for transport. I'll organize our defense and evacuation." "Major," she said, grabbing his arm, "if they take me alive, they'll extract what I know. Their psionics can rip information directly from our minds." Kane met her gaze steadily. "That's not going to happen." Within minutes, Kane had his team deployed throughout the facility. The first explosions rocked the upper levels as Vorax breaching pods punched through the Martian surface and began boring down toward the hidden installation. "They knew exactly where to hit us," Lieutenant Rodriguez observed as they took position at a key junction. "This isn't a random hunt." "No," Kane agreed. "They're specifically targeting our research. We need to buy time for the evacuation shuttles." The first Vorax warriors breached the facility's upper level 20 minutes later. Unlike previous encounters, these weren't just hunters. They were elite shock troops, their bodies enhanced with additional biomechanical augmentations. They moved with even greater speed and precision, using advanced tactics that suggested they thoroughly studied human defensive protocols. Kane's team engaged them with standard energy weapons at first, deliberately withholding their few prototype weapons to prevent the Vorax from analyzing and adapting to them. The fighting was brutal and close quarters, with the human defenders gradually falling back according to Kane's strategic retreat plan. "Where's Reyes?" Kane asked over the tactical network as he fired a sustained burst at a Vorax warrior, driving it temporarily back into cover. "Research vault is secure," came the response from Surgeon Wu. "Prototypes are loaded on the evacuation shuttle. Dr. Reyes is insisting on retrieving one more data core from her personal lab." Kane swore under his breath. "Hold this position," he ordered his team. "I'm going after her." He sprinted through maintenance passages, avoiding the main corridors where fighting was heaviest. 3 times he encountered Vorax scouts and was forced to engage in brief, violent skirmishes that left him wounded but alive. When he finally reached Raya's lab, he found her frantically working at a console while 2 security officers lay dead near the doorway. "We need to go now," he shouted, grabbing her arm. "Almost got it," she replied, eyes fixed on the data transfer. "This contains my latest findings, correlations between their bioelectric field signatures and their adaptive capabilities. It could be the key to developing countermeasures." A thunderous crash from the corridor announced the arrival of more Vorax. Kane positioned himself in the doorway, weapon raised, as 3 warriors rounded the corner at full sprint. "Now, Eliza," he roared, opening fire. His weapon struck the lead Vorax, staggering it momentarily. The other 2 leaped over their comrade, one landing on the ceiling and the other using the wall as a springboard to approach from a different angle. Kane tracked them both, switching targets with practiced efficiency, but he knew he couldn't hold them for long. Behind him, Reyes yanked the data core free and shouted, "Got it." Kane tossed a timed explosive into the corridor and pulled Reyes toward a maintenance shaft. "This way." They barely made it into the shaft before the explosion ripped through the lab, buying them precious seconds. As they crawled through the cramped passage, the sounds of pursuit echoed behind them. "The main evacuation route is cut off," Kane informed her, checking his neural link. "We'll have to take the emergency tubes to the surface and rendezvous with a rescue craft." "What about the others?" Reyes asked. "Most personnel are already evacuated. My team is holding the rear guard." His voice faltered slightly. "Some won't make it out." They emerged into a vertical shaft with emergency climbing rungs leading up to the Martian surface. As they began their ascent, a screeching sound from below announced that the Vorax had found their escape route. "Climb," Kane urged, pulling a final explosive from his belt. "I'll slow them down." The explosive bought them enough time to reach an emergency airlock. Once sealed inside their environment suits, they emerged onto the rust-red Martian landscape. In the distance, they could see the lights of Mars Colony Prime, but between them and safety lay open terrain, dangerous exposure for fleeing prey. "Stay low and follow me," Kane instructed, leading her on a winding path through a series of ravines and rock formations. "Rescue shuttle is inbound, ETA 4 minutes." They had covered half the distance when a Vorax hunter ship appeared overhead, its searchlights sweeping the terrain. Kane pulled Reyes into the shadow of a large boulder as the light passed over them. "They're tracking our suit's signatures," he realized. "We need to mask our emissions." Reyes reached for her utility belt and removed a small device, electromagnetic pulse generator. "It'll fry our suit systems, but it'll also disrupt their sensors temporarily." "Do it," Kane decided. "When the systems reset, we run for that ridge. The shuttle can pick us up there." The EMP worked as planned, plunging their suits into darkness as all electronic systems temporarily failed. The hunter ship's searchlight made one more pass before moving away, apparently losing their trail. As their suits slowly rebooted, they made a desperate dash for the ridge. They were halfway up the slope when a bone-chilling shriek split the air. A lone Vorax hunter had tracked them on foot, using its natural senses rather than technology. It bounded across the rocky terrain with incredible speed, closing the distance rapidly. Kane turned to face it, pushing Reyes behind him. "Keep going. Get to the shuttle." "Not without you," she insisted, drawing a small sidearm. The Vorax attacked with blinding speed, its talons slashing through Kane's armor and drawing blood. He countered with a combat knife, managing to wound the creature's side. The Vorax hissed in pain but pressed its attack, seeming to relish the challenge. In a desperate move, Kane activated one of the experimental weapons he'd been carrying, a small molecular disruptor still in prototype phase. The device emitted a field that temporarily destabilized molecular bonds in organic tissue. He thrust it against the Vorax's chest as the creature bore him to the ground. The effect was instantaneous and horrifying. The area of the Vorax's body around the device began to lose cohesion, cells unable to maintain their structure. The creature shrieked in genuine agony and surprise, perhaps the first time it had ever experienced a threat its adaptive biology couldn't immediately counter. Taking advantage of the moment, Kane pushed the wounded alien aside and scrambled back to his feet, grabbing Reyes and continuing their climb. Behind them, the Vorax writhed on the ground, its body attempting to recover from damage unlike any it had encountered before. The rescue shuttle appeared over the ridge just as they reached the top, its landing struts extending as it touched down on the uneven terrain. The rear hatch opened to reveal Sergeant Wu and the remnants of Kane's team providing cover fire as Kane and Reyes made a final sprint to safety. As the shuttle lifted off, Reyes caught a glimpse of the injured Vorax watching from below. Unlike the predatory focus she'd observed in previous encounters, its posture suggested something new. Uncertainty, perhaps even a hint of fear. "It worked," she said, showing Kane the data readings she'd captured from the encounter. The molecular disruptor affected it on a fundamental level. It couldn't adapt fast enough. Kane nodded grimly, allowing a medic to treat his wounds. "Now we need to weaponize this on a larger scale." The shuttle rejoined a small flotilla of vessels retreating from Mars as the Vorax forces secured the remains of the research facility. Aboard the UEDS Resolute, Admiral Chen received Kane and Reyes in his private quarters, his expression grave. "We lost the facility, but most of the personnel and critical research were evacuated," he informed them. "However, the Vorax now control a significant presence on Mars. Earth is considering this a major strategic setback." "Sir, it's not all bad news," Kane said, nodding to Reyes. She placed the data core on Chen's desk and activated its holographic display. "We've confirmed a critical weakness in Vorax biology, Admiral. Their adaptive capabilities can be overwhelmed and disrupted. The prototype weapons work, and now we have field test data to refine them." Chen studied the data, his expression slowly shifting from concern to cautious hope. This is the first genuine vulnerability we found. Can we exploit it on a tactical scale? With proper resources and development time? Yes, Rise affirmed. We need to create multi-vector weapons systems that can overwhelm their adaptive responses. If we coordinate our attacks properly, we can neutralize their greatest advantage. There's something else, Kane added. The Vorax knew exactly where to find our secret facility. They targeted it specifically to destroy our research. This wasn't a random hunt. They're aware we're developing countermeasures. Chen's eyes narrowed. You're suggesting we have a security breach, or they have capabilities we haven't identified yet. Rise interjected. Some form of long-range sensing or intelligence gathering we haven't detected. Either way, Kane continued, they're becoming more strategic in their attacks. They're no longer just hunting for sport. They recognize us as a potential threat. Admiral Chen was silent for a long moment, weighing the implications. That's both concerning and promising. If they see us as a threat rather than just prey, it means our efforts are having an impact. He stood and moved to a large tactical display, showing the current disposition of human and Vorax forces throughout the solar system and nearby star systems. The situation looked grim, with red Vorax indicators spreading like a cancer through formerly human-controlled space. We need time to develop these new weapons and tactics, Chen said. Time we don't have if they continue their current rate of advance. What if we give them something else to focus on? Kane suggested. A diversion that makes them think we're pursuing a different strategy. Chen raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind, Major? Operation Wounded Prey, Kane replied. We make ourselves look vulnerable in a specific sector, draw their hunting instincts toward a target they can't resist, while our real work continues elsewhere. You're talking about sacrificing good people as bait, Chen noted gravely. No, sir. I'm talking about a volunteer force equipped with our current best defenses and enough firepower to make the Vorax pay dearly for taking the bait. We won't win, but we'll hurt them and keep their attention while Dr. Rice and her team complete development of the new weapon systems. Chen considered the proposal. Where would you stage this operation? The Saturn shipyards, Kane replied without hesitation. It's already heavily defended, has strategic value they'd believe we'd fight to protect, and has enough space for a prolonged engagement that would tie up significant Vorax resources. The Admiral turned to Reyes. How much time would you need? With full resources and priority production, 3 months to develop and distribute the new weapons in meaningful numbers. Chen nodded slowly. I'll present this to the Defense Council. In the meantime, Dr. Rice, you'll be transferred to our secure facility in the Kuiper Belt. It's our most remote research station, and the Vorax have shown no signs of penetrating that far into the system yet. I should be with the field units, she protested, seeing the weapons in action, gathering data for refinements. Too risky, Chen replied firmly. You're now the most valuable scientific asset we have. Major Kane will oversee the combat testing of your prototypes. After the meeting concluded, Kane walked with Rice to her temporary quarters aboard the Resolute. Both were silent, processing the weight of responsibility now resting on their shoulders. Will it be enough? Rice finally asked. Even with these new weapons, they still outmatch us in so many ways. Kane stopped and turned to her. You know what makes humans different from most species the Vorax have hunted. We're not just prey that occasionally fights back. We're predators too, in our own way. Throughout our history, we've been both hunter and hunted. We understand them better than they understand us. Is that enough? It has to be, Kane replied simply. Because if it isn't, our species doesn't have a future. As they parted ways, Kane to prepare for Operation Wounded Prey and Rice for her transfer to the Kuiper Belt facility. Neither could shake the feeling that they were balanced on a knife's edge. The coming months would determine whether humanity would become just another extinct species in the Vorax hunting chronicles, or if they would achieve something no prey had managed before, turning the tables on the galaxy's most feared predators. Across the solar system, military vessels began their carefully choreographed movements, positioning for what might be humanity's last coordinated stand. On Earth and the remaining colonies, production facilities worked around the clock, retooling to manufacture the new weapons designed to exploit the Vorax weakness. And in the darkness between worlds, Vorax hunter ships prowled, their crews eager for the next phase of what had become the most challenging and exhilarating hunt in living memory. What they didn't realize was that their prey had finally found hope, and a predator with hope is the most dangerous prey of all. The counterstrike. Operation Wounded Prey unfolded exactly as Major Kane had planned. The Saturn shipyards blazed with weapons fire as human defenders engaged the Vorax hunting packs that swarmed through the sector. For 8 weeks, the battle raged across the rings of Saturn and its many moons, drawing Vorax forces from throughout the solar system. The human forces fought with desperate courage, employing conventional weapons in creative combinations that occasionally managed to overcome the Vorax adaptive capabilities through sheer volume of fire. But it was all a carefully orchestrated distraction. In the isolated research station, nestled among the frozen bodies of the Kuiper Belt, Dr. Eliza Rice worked with feverish intensity. Surrounded by the brightest scientific minds humanity could salvage from its besieged worlds, she refined her understanding of Vorax biology and developed increasingly effective countermeasures. The multiphasic disruptor is ready for final testing, announced Dr. Takahashi, her lead weapons engineer, as he entered her lab. Production prototypes are already being manufactured at the Luna facilities. Rice looked up from the holographic model of Vorax cellular structures she'd been studying. Dark circles under her eyes testified to her relentless work schedule. What about the delivery systems? The portable versions can be equipped by special forces immediately. Ship-mounted versions will take another 2 weeks to integrate with existing weapon hardpoints. And the adaptive ammunition? Takahashi smiled for the first time in weeks.